guys, welcome to another episode of 234 Essential. My name remains Ayomide Tayo, AOT2. My co-host is here with me.
Hey guys, my name is Ugochi, the Igbo Stallion. How you doing?
Yeah, and today is going to be a special episode. It's not the normal run of the mill. We talk about what's happening in the country in the space of a week, flop of the week or prop of the week. It's something very topical, something that just happened recently in Nigeria that covers the length and breadth and depth of this nation. And yeah, that's why we are here. So passing the ball over to my co-host, still in a birthday mood. Yeah.
Till the end of September, it's my birthday. I saw that.
September is almost done.
I don't care. So September 30th, 2023, till the end. Next year again, we'll go another rodeo. You guys, if you haven't tried to send us fan mail, please send us fan mail. If you haven't followed us on every social media platform, please follow us. I follow us on every social media platform at 234 Essential Podcast. Very important. Today is rather interesting. We've talked about a couple of things on 234, and because of the nature of the podcast, it's important that everything as concerns the Nigerian economy, in a sense, is touched on, and how the rule of law and policies of our government or the country we live in affects the everyday Nigerian. In the year 2023 has been loaded with a lot of happenings already. It feels like we've lived 2 years in one. And of course, the most prominent thing that happened this year, one of the most prominent things that happened this year was the elections, the Nigerian elections, the presidential, the governorship. I think today we're really centering on the presidential election because most recently there has been news on the tribunal that was held after the elections, contesting the results and all of that. And we just felt it was important to also speak to every Nigerian who cares about Nigeria and who cares to listen. Whether you care, baby, you don't care, you must care. That's the truth. I don't know if I'm bullying. AOT2 will say that is every time I'm talking love and light. But yeah, it's important that we also sort of understand how these things, how the recent events affects us as people. And with us today to have this interesting conversation is not a first timer to the 234 family. No, you're not a first timer. This is not your first time.
Yeah, it's not.
Yeah, he's been here a couple of times. Okay, this second time actually on 234. Hey guys, welcome Ejiro. Esigone.
Am I supposed to woo?
Yeah, and
okay.
This background noise. Woo! Just a brief intro about Ejiro, because since last time a lot has changed. This is the truth. Ejiro is a lawyer by training who has worked in risk consulting at KPMG, as a management consultant at Boston Consulting Group, and currently works with Paystack as a product specialist. He's also a co-founder of Ashiri Technologies, a company focused on solving financial inclusion challenges in Africa, and a co-founder of the Village Production Company, a filmmaking company. In 2020, he was nominated in the voted in the intrapreneur category of the Future Africa Awards, and his health tech solution, Mayo, was shortlisted as top 100 solution in Africa by the AFDB in its Africa versus Virus Challenge. His current startup, Ashiri, is one of only 21 solutions selected by AWS across Africa to be part of its 2023 cohorts for the AWS FinTech Accelerator. Ejiro is also a social commentator, hence why this conversation is going to be really interesting and insightful today. Ejiro, how are you doing?
I'm good. It's a wonderful day. How are you?
We're good.
Thanks for having me on.
You all right?
It's good to have you as well. Thank you for coming, making time out of your busy schedule. I want you to touch on something real quick before we go into the real crux of today.
Yeah.
The topic of today is the rule and the rule of law pre, during, and after elections, and the impact of the rule of law in Nigeria as it stands right now after elections, right? But before we go into that topic, I want to ask you, because we are doing something that's very important to us on this podcast. You're doing filmmaking.
Interesting. Okay.
we talk a lot about filmmaking.
A nice way to blindside me, but okay.
Okay, great. we talk a lot about filmmaking here in Nigeria because on 234 because we know that it is important to tell stories.
Yeah.
And it's important that Nigerians tell Nigerian stories.
Yeah.
Tell us how the journey has been in filmmaking. How long have you been making movies for?
I made my first short film in 2018. But filmmaking for me has been something I do on the side, right? I work with two of my friends. I think I used to write short stories. And then one day I wrote one of them. It's called No Means Maybe. I sent it to like my friends, my colleagues, like put it on my status. And one of my guys read it and he was like, Ejiro, we have to turn this into a short film. And I was very like, I don't know anything about film. And he was like, no, we have to for sure do it. And then, we put money together. Then I was working in KPMG, saved like 3 or 4 months salary. had like a 800K budget or something. And we made No Means Maybe. And just like bringing like something that we wrote into life was just like super dope for us. And so I think we just started working a bit more. And funny thing is like for them as well, for Lucky and Josh, the guys who I make films with, that was also their first project. But since then, both of them have gone, I think the team has worked on Grind, which is now on Amazon Prime. They both worked individually as associate producers on Making of the King, which is a documentary about King of Boys, which is on Netflix. Yeah. I think we've won awards now, film festivals in Canada, film festivals in the US.
Nice.
And we just finished production of The Wives, which is a series about like young marriages. Let's call it that. Now we're in post-production. We showed our executive producers yesterday. Everybody's happy, money well spent. So it's been a really nice journey. I think in the first quarter of next year, we want to make our first feature, our own, the one that we'll own. Most of the IP, yeah. So it's been a slow, like it's been slow because like for me it's like on the side, but I think it's been very like fulfilling. So yeah.
No. We're ready to enter politics one time.
What's your favorite production so far and why?
That we've made?
Yes.
EJ. I think the reason why is because of how topical it was. We shot EJ at the later end of 2020, and it was about police brutality, and that was just coming off the back of NSAS, which I was also very like passionate about. So it was really very like topical. Like everybody who watched the film felt it the way we wanted them to feel. So I think that was our, like my favorite so far.
Amazing. I actually, do you want to say something?
Go ahead.
Great. I'm actually so excited to hear about that. We always talk about movies on 234. This is just off the bat now.
Yeah.
This is literally me pulling out a rabbit from my hat. What did you think about Jago Jago?
That's if you watched it. You never asked me.
I watched Jago Jago.
Yeah.
I know she should have watched it.
Jago Jago is the one about. Remind me the plot.
The warlord.
The warlord. Okay, yeah, exactly. The guy came to train in London. He fell in love with his daughter.
And they clashed.
And then they clashed. Okay. I think my challenge, I think it was a good film. So let me start from there. I think it was a good film. I just think like my only challenge is that I had watched King of Thieves, which is a similar, very like it's the same world and then similar actors. And then I went to cinema to watch the second one. I forget now. Orisha. I watched Orisha in cinema as well. And then I watched Jagun Jagun. So it felt like a lot. I know a lot of people did not see. I loved King of Thieves so much. I think I saw it twice in cinemas. And I told everybody on my time, go and watch this film. It's a great film. But I think like having the same actors is like, imagine if in the year that White House Down on Olympus Had Fallen was released, they had used the same actors for both. Again. So it just felt like, why am I like, I'm watching the same film. Yeah, so it does. If you watch Jagun Jagun, if you haven't watched any of them and you watch Jagun Jagun, I'm sure like the feeling you would be. But I already watched so many of so I wasn't so stoked, but it was a good film.
Yeah, it has also eclipsed the story in a sense, because you have to ask like, what was the storyline again?
Yeah.
So it had already eclipsed that. But anyway.
Yeah.
Now into the grind of it.
Into the nitty gritty.
Love it. So 2023 came, the long awaited, anticipated time for Nigerians, where we're hopeful that our next president, after suffering, Buhari became an adjective. Like, it was no longer a thing of, the president. It was like, why they Buhari me? Like, people were using Buhari to say, like,
hard times.
Yeah, exactly. Do you understand? So, in this Buhari economy, they chop rice. You understand that sort of thing? He had become an adjective, and a lot of young Nigerians had also come of age during his regime. He spent 8 years in office. That's enough time for people to grow into their capacities in the economy, right?
Yeah.
And the elections finally came, long awaited, everything. Tell me what it was, or tell us what it was like for you pre-elections, just also seeing that coming of age factor happening in Nigeria, from getting PVCs to everything. It was a madness. Everybody was involved. How did that feel for you? What was that time like for you?
Yeah, I think I'll focus. Just so I don't get very passionate, I'll focus on. I'll try and focus on the role of the law, right? Okay. I think that I think INEC is a challenge. I think the laws that create INEC gives it too much responsibility that we now clearly know that they are unable to handle. So for context, the 2015 elections cost Nigeria about a range less than 40 billion naira. Less than that, maybe 20. But let me just to be safe, let me say 40 billion. The 2019 elections cost Nigeria about 200 billion. And then the 2023 elections cost us about 300 billion. So you would expect that the level of preparedness and just quality of our experience would be significantly better because we spent a ton of money. But all of us can admit that it was not like that. So I think when I talk about pre-elections, I would say INEC has clearly shown us that they are unable to register people for elections, plan the logistics of the elections, and administer the compilation of results of the elections. So if you just focus on the register people for the elections bits, people were going for weeks on end to try to get registered. After they went through that entire ridiculous stress, they went for weeks on end to collect their PVCs, and everything was a struggle. There's no reason why the online registration process is not seamless. There's no reason why the collection process is not seamless. In the world we live in, right? So let's say, for example, that COVID happened. If COVID happened in a year that we had an election, would we have cancelled our elections?
No.
Do you get? Yeah. Because if you cannot today say register for your PVC, get it printed and delivered to your home address today, when are we going to be able to do it? So people who, and you can say charge an extra fee or whatever for that to happen, but that should we should be able to have that level of excellence already.
And competency.
Yes, and competence. So INEC is showing clearly that they are not capable. Then it's clearly a data problem. If you have a driver's license, you have an international passport, you have a national identity card, you should be able to vote in the Nigerian election.
You have NIN.
Right?
Yeah.
You should be able to vote in the, because now having people re-register, if you moved from one local government to another, you can't just go online and just move. Why can't you do that? Why do I have to go somewhere to ask for, so the process is, for me, pre-election, when I think about the pre-election, I just think the process is clearly, INEC is out of their depth. Anytime we require them to, it's either we break INEC into bits regionally and say you register for the Southwest, so regional electoral bodies that do the three things on a regional level, or we have three different bodies that do different parts of the process. So a registration body, a logistics body that plans the on-day, I didn't want to talk about the on-day yet, but the on-day things, and then one that does compilation. But INEC just shown us that they are completely, because now the election is done, it was a complete failure, right? No repercussions. We should have repercussions for the failure to register people properly. Yeah. People should be sacked for that. So there should be repercussions for that. You can't just spend taxpayers' money, hundreds of billions, and just be we couldn't do it. It didn't go as planned. So sad. Sorry, guys. God. See you in 4 years, but I'll still be there.
Is it more? So you mentioned structure, but is it also with the personnel themselves?
Of course. Yeah. I think it's a combination. I think that if we decouple INEC, then it's the points of failures in I would say they increase, but we may have a bad what do you call it, a not a great experience, but then we cannot say, okay, hopefully the second bit will be better. But then now, once there's incompetence in INEC, our entire electoral process is going to be rubbish.
The chain is affected.
The chain is just rubbish.
Effect.
Yeah, do you get? Because it's just one body, and I think that honestly they are incapable. So that's something that I think we need to think about. And I don't know if I have the answers. I just have like 2 options in my head. There might be more. We really need to think about how is INEC structured? Does it work for Nigeria? And this is also important because when you now come to even like I read something recently about like when the primaries were happening, right? How INEC extended the primaries 2 days before the PDP primaries, and then APC was able to do theirs after. Because we all know that both APC and PDP were watching each other to know like who should we bring out? Because I believe very strongly that if PDP had brought out Peter Obi, APC would not have brought out Tinubu.
Yeah.
I don't think they would have done it. I think that if they would have been like, nah, these two, because we're 2 big parties, this candidate is clearly far above this other candidate. It's going to like, do you get? So I think that was an advantage to the APC, and they were able to do their primaries after when Peter Obi had left and Wike had lost, and then it was clear Atiku had won, and then they were now able to do what they wanted to do. So I think that as well, just like impacts things. So I think INEC needs to be restructured. Let's talk about pre-elections. But just general talk now about pre-elections, like there are very positive signs. For the first time in my whole life, people were like up at midnight watching party primaries.
Yeah.
People cared.
Yeah.
I've never, like,
there was
never,
a conscious
ever,
effort.
there was a conscious effort. People were like what's happening? Like, we were listening to them talk. Like, people were really interested in the pre-election process. And I think that is some progress. We've learned some things now. Like, we're a bit more aware. We should have been aware before, but like now we're a bit more aware. I think that has to do with like this generation. I'll call them, I won't say like zillennials to like early millennials, right? I think that we've done quite a bit of things. We're a bit louder, and we're a bit more forceful, and we're a bit more. We're less patient, and we've been showing that like over time. Less tolerant. So less tolerance is the word. Thank you. And I think that Buhari's time was really horrible. We did not want to just sit back.
8 years, yeah.
8 years of people turning from like 20 to 28, 22 to 30. So that's a whole phase of their lives.
Decade.
Lost to like they didn't make as much money as they thought they
stagnant.
would. They didn't like, do you get, the standards of living didn't improve, and it started out well. Like in the 2013, 14, 15, a lot of people were traveling back to Nigeria, starting new businesses. Like we thought like we were going to pop. Yeah. And then even like makeup artists were charging 400K. So there was money. So we thought that we're going to pop, and then boom, this guy comes and so I think that we're really interested, and I think that's a good thing. So I think that's what I'll say about pre-election. Yeah.
I'm going to ask you another part of that question based off of what you just said now. Maybe after. And so like I completely agree with your perspective on pre-elections, because even on 234 here we're quite psyched. We're happy. Me too. I went to go and collect my PVC, and I went to go and you saw me. Me too. I was outside because I was so hopeful, right? Not that this hope ever dies, and I hope it doesn't, because it's not even an option. But like then we moved quickly to elections proper, the long-awaited elections. We went to our polling units. Yeah. We tried to get to our polling units safely. We tried to coordinate ourselves. We saw a lot of that. A lot of people trying to coordinate their polling units to ensure that almost everything goes as it was said. IREV was going to be used, so everybody went early so to go and get captured. I remember like on the day of the presidential election, I was on the line, and when they said it was time to take pictures, everybody just like ran to quickly form a line because I must be caught, they must capture me so that I can vote. Do you get what I mean? There was that excitement. People came out in their numbers. What was during election like for you? What was the election like after, seeing what had happened pre-election? Yeah. During election, what was this experience like for you? And what would you say was a key takeaway from that whole experience?
I'll start from the key takeaway and I'll talk about the details. Okay. Again, INEC is a mess. And I keep on saying this because I think the responsibility for organizing the elections is INEC's, period. Yeah. We can't there's nobody, Okay, so just for context, for anybody
Are
listening,
they independent of the government? Or
they should be, but they're not.
Okay.
Yeah. So I was supporting, and I still support Peter Obi as the candidate for, so that just the context is there in case you, But like, put that aside, the responsibility for organizing the election rests with INEC, not with the APC, not with the federal government in the sense of like the executive arm, but with the INEC. And I think they did a horrible job organizing the election. So let's talk about election day, right? So first of all, I voted in Ikate, not too far from where we are right now. And it was extremely difficult to find your polling units because our polling units are in front of the Oba's Palace.
Oh yeah, the famous
there
Oba's
were
Palace.
40 polling units there.
Yes.
But like, how do I know where I'm going? Like, you've had 4 years to do this damn thing. You've done it 4 times already. Like, fix up. Like, we don't even know where we're going. So it's like, there's that whole part of like, we're trying to find out. Remember that there was actually like a deadline. So there's like, you're supposed to have voted by 2:30 or 3:30, something like that.
Earlier by 2:30.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, but like, everybody's like moving around, like trying to figure stuff out. A lot of the polling units had not arrived as at 12 noon. Eventually, around like 1, we start voting, right? At some point, and like, that's why you could have voted without your PVC. Because all they ask you for is your name. Then they ask you for, it's not like you use the PVC. You don't tap the PVC to show that you are there, right?
There's no biometric confirmation.
There's no biometric confirmation. Like, your face is not used, your fingerprints are not used. They just like take a picture. But there's no technology in the world that exists in Nigeria that can quickly check under any lighting conditions, because it's like they just like raise the camera, snap you, and move. So I know that they were not doing any biometric verification. When I went through the process, I was like, I didn't need my PVC for this. I could have voted without my PVC, which now makes me question, why not everybody who has registered can vote if they have a regulatory ID, regardless of whether they have a PVC or not. So long as you know that they are the ones. Like, why because you get the way the process flowed in my own polling unit, you could have voted without your PVC. They didn't use it to do anything. It was not used in the process. So that's something else. And then as we're about to vote, the thugs were unleashed. Yeah. By whom? We don't know. But the thugs, we do know. But let's not talk about it. Yes, because the thugs were unleashed and they went around destroying ballot boxes. Now, in my own polling units, the police officer held our ballot box. So kudos to him, wherever he is.
Yeah.
But in many other polling units, I told you there were like 40, right? They just stood back and these boys came and destroyed everything. So again, election planning, adequate security for a place with concentrated polling units.
That was volatile.
Yeah, so that happened, and but people stayed back, people tried to vote. Eventually, later in the day, the army came. Let me tell you how bad the planning was. Eventually, the army came, right? Allowed people vote, but now it was getting late before we could conclude voting. So when we were done, it was like 8 p.m.
Whoa.
Yeah, when we were done, 8 p.m., 8:30. The army was telling us, count these votes.
Quick.
Or because we will have to go. So we were begging soldiers, please stay. Because we knew that if they left us,
they're gonna
all that good. So we finished counting the votes. How do we take the results to the ward? There was no arrangement for transportation from
INEC.
From INEC, for the INEC officials
to move.
I had to drive, yes. Myself and 3 other guys used our cars to drive the INEC officials to the collation center. And then when we got to the collation center, there was like an army truck at the gates, so I guess as security, but we drove and then we walked in with them. But then it was just chaos.
Yeah, no,
the place was dark. It was like a school. The INEC officials just all over a field with desks, holding. They had to transfer the records from one thing. I was like, man,
very cumbersome process.
This is such a horrible nonsense process. Literally, we had to on torchlight like this for them to shine in, for them to put down records. And this is us voting in Etiosa, which is one of the wealthiest local governments in Lagos and probably in Nigeria.
Yeah.
So imagine what the experience is in not so wealthy local governments in Alimosho or all these other places deep inside. Now talk about that's Lagos. So then outside Lagos, all these other places, how did their process go? Because if there's already spotlight on Lagos and yet people were still this rubbish.
Yeah,
If there was this much
incompetence.
incompetence.
Then guess what's happening in places
think
where there's
about
no
it,
media
in all the
spotlight.
other places, we have 180,000 polling units. So think about like how ridiculous like tracking this would be for any real political party that's interested in like a fair election. So INEC was a mess. And then so it's not surprising that you start hearing stories of articulation center, they were just rewriting results and they were just mutilating because the process made no sense. Now let's go back to the technology. What was the idea of having this technology in the first place?
Is it the BVS or
The IREVs.
Oh, IREVs, yeah.
Is that because they know, and I'm sure that maybe that's what impacted how poorly they planned for like the other places. Because on the spot, the results are supposed to be uploaded.
Yeah.
What I thought was going to happen was that on the spot, like we'll be seeing like collation of the results. I didn't even know that the technology they're using is just to snap the image. I thought it would be snap the image, enter the results. So that immediately we are collating live and we can see
live collation of
but
it.
that wasn't happening. So the tech, and then that day we now heard that, presidential results cannot be uploaded. In terms of like what we should have felt like was happening, then we should have known that something was wrong. Yeah. Because that level of there's incompetence and there's just sabotage.
Yeah.
There's no reason why something that you're using now can upload Senate, can upload House of Rep, but can't upload presidential. Like literally made no sense. We should not have agreed then, but we did. Because we were also just like caught up in it and trying to figure it out. And so it's like, okay, let's get them to the, like we took a picture, we'll keep it. Like how, just imagine you, a citizen whose job is to go vote and go home. We had to stay, wait for hours for INEC to show up, then wait to vote. Some people were beat up. I think this guy who released Black Book, I think he's the one, the director who released Black Book. I think he voted, I think he's because he looked like him. He's one who he voted at my, it's either him and that filmmaker. He voted at my polling unit. When the thugs came, he brought out his phone to record. They chased him. They beat him up. They held him by the neck. They slapped him multiple times. This is broad daylight in Etiosa, just for context. So now, again, imagine what's happening in the places where there are no celebrities.
Or non-average Nigerians.
Or just average Nigerians. The common man. Now, imagine the common man experience. This is someone who probably has hundreds of millions or tens of millions in his account, who probably knows commissioner of police and police officers, who is known, is a known person. That's his experience. Now, imagine the other people's experience. And that's why you just know that this election was so significantly compromised. And then we now finally drag them there, force them to. But look at the amount of work ordinary citizens were having to do to make sure that their votes counted. It made no sense. When I got home, the polling units that my wife was voting at, I thought that, because I went to go and I did extra work, I'll be late. They are not done voting. So they finished counting their votes at around like 11:30 at night. Some Nigerians came out in the morning before daylight. They didn't get home till midnight. Some stayed in the rain till the next morning, 3, 4. That is not the job of Nigerians. And that is why I'll take this whole work. What's the name? The INEC chairman guy. Can't remember his name. Mahmoud. You did a horrible job. Like if anybody, like you even did more than horrible. Like let's not start using sane stuff. But like in any sane society, if you are giving 300 billion to anybody to do a job and this is what they did, you'll be fired and you should be investigated
on the spot.
Because the level of ineptitude does not match the amount of money spent. So that's like I think sometimes we are very hard on Nigerians. It's like, you people don't know how to keep your focus on something. Human beings are not made to do the amount of things that Nigerians were having to do to vote. You defend yourself. You come out.
You talk to a vigilante.
They're like we're hearing stories all around the island of like boys having to gather, carry stone and stick.
Some people are bringing dogs.
Some people had to bring dogs. Look at the things that ordinary Nigerians, not trained soldiers, were having to do so they can vote. I didn't see someone in my church for like a month or something after the elections. He showed up one day. His arm was in a cast. Like, what was happening? He said he fought back with the thugs and they broke like a big plank of wood on his shoulder. That's what ordinary Nigerians had to do. And this just happened. It's not up to 6 months.
Yeah, no.
So, and then you want them to carry on that cause on their head and go, like, people are human beings. They're not wood.
They're tired, man.
So, I think the election itself was very underwhelming. It was a very underwhelming period. I think the only reason why is like, as we were doing like recordings of, the votes being counted in different places, we were feeling like, our votes are actually counting. But like, we trusted that INEC would not be so inept, so compromised, so useless in like executing an election that this is not the first one. This is not our first election in our history.
Yeah.
These 180,000 polling units have not changed since last election. And you had more money this time and more planning, and you just did a horrible job. So I think, take away, the work is plenty. And INEC, as again I said, INEC is I don't want to say too powerful, but such a single point of failure, too easily compromised. Because now that's organizing the election and collating and announcing the results is happening just within you. So if, for example, another body was responsible for organizing the elections and then transmitting the results electronically, and then somebody else is responsible, at least there's like a handshake between the records that we kept. You have the responsibility to keep records.
Yeah, that's your job.
And then if you don't keep records, you probably, if for example, a rec officer doesn't keep records in the States, probably jailed or whatever, you don't keep records, then the other guy who is supposed to collate, doesn't, like, there can be like a handshake, like you get, and then we can talk about like how this impacts the tribunals, right? But yeah, it was a very, very bad election.
You said you're an observer for the Labour Party, right?
Yeah.
Were you surprised when the results were trickling in and there were rumors then that Obi was leading in Lagos?
So let me clarify. So I was not like in an official, like I was in a media observer. So we had like a station where we were like talking to people that were on the ground and like having conversations with them. I did that up to like maybe 9, 10, 11, because it started early in the morning, like 6 o'clock. Before I went to vote. After I went to vote, I didn't go back because like the day just took it. So no, I went back actually. I went back and I was there for another maybe 2 hours, and then I went back to the polling units.
Yeah. So were you surprised when the votes were trickling in and it seemed as if Obi was will take over Lagos or will win Lagos?
I expected Obi to win Lagos. It just makes sense. If you look at the demographic of people who would vote for Obi, it is Lagosians. So Lagos is already like a melting pot, just like different people from different
metropolitan area.
Yeah, but also I'm sure that Lagos is still like majority Yoruba. Yes. Lagos has a high, the educated population is higher in Lagos than in other places, and without unduly disrespecting anybody, most educated people would have voted for Obi. Period.
Yeah.
Just like with this, what I said now sounds like, it's conjecture, but just go and look at most educated states in Nigeria, the top 12. Out of that top 12, Obi won like 10 or 9 of those states. So it does make sense. So I'm not even talking conjecture, it's just facts.
It's just facts.
Whatever you want to do with it, do with it. But the truth of the matter is that in the places with more educated people, Obi was likely to win. Yeah, which is why the next governorship election, when they wanted to disrupt the election,
came out.
They were not targeting. It's like, as I keep on saying, like I keep on talking about the fact that what we experienced in the governorship election was not bigotry. Yeah. It was politics.
It was pure politics.
But
it was painted as bigotry.
It was painted as bigotry. It was political thugs masking on that bigotry.
Because there was a trigger.
What they were trying to do was to disrupt the places where they felt were educated people and suppress those votes as against Igbo people. That was one of the points, because they beat a lot of Yoruba people. They didn't care.
Yeah.
Like literally, my friend who lives in Oniru, who again, those ones were disrupted in the presidential election, in the governorship election. They all know she's Yoruba. The thugs live in the same place we had. They know who she is. They didn't allow her vote. They sent her back. Because they knew like where she was leaning. So I think that's just something else. So I was not surprised at all. In fact, I didn't expect it to be that close. The only reason why I expected it to be close is because I felt like they were going to suppress his votes here because of the amount of power that they have. But like, yeah.
So what can we do about security concerning the electoral prayer? Because we saw all things that happened, especially in Oshodi, obviously here in Nigeria as well. Is there a way for us to suppress this? Because it really dampened the spirits of a lot of voters when it came to the government. People are like, I'm not coming out to get beaten again. Yeah. So is there any, and this is not the first time electoral violence has happened in Nigeria.
Yes.
So is there like any way you see that maybe there's a solution somewhere 4 years, 8 years down the line? It seems big because when you're talking about violence, you're not talking about security.
Yeah.
And security is a big issue in Nigeria as it is. So how do we even go about that?
See, bro.
That's a heavy one.
Let me keep my radical ideas to myself. I think that, there's some things that are not citizen problems. Some things at the end of the day are government problems. If the government of the day does not have the political will to ensure that elections are safe, elections will not be safe. If they have the political will to ensure that elections are safe, elections will be safe. It's actually that simple. If the government insists that elections are safe, thugs would not overrun polling units. Period. We have they would deploy the army faster. The police officers would be better prepared. There are more police officers at toll gates.
Yeah.
When there's a rumor of a protest,
they are polling units.
They are more better and better. And the thing is that they don't need to stand near the polling units. They need to, I don't know, they're a security agency. Like, they can map out the location. So, for example, if you're voting in Etiosa, they don't need to come and stand beside us. But there's an entrance gate there. There's an entrance gate there. If the police is in the right places and properly armed, and once they hear of any fracas, they can show up immediately. But the point is that I don't think there's a political will, which is why when it comes to failures of our failures, we always have to go back to how do we fix governance? And I think that the only way we fix governance is if there's accountability, if there's responsibility, if there's repercussion for your actions.
Yeah.
And I think that right now, people who fail in governance in Nigeria face zero repercussions. They don't face criminal or judicial system repercussions, but also they don't face social repercussions.
Yeah.
So even if we can't, because we're not a judge or the jury, we can't go and hold somebody and say, we'll try you today. That will probably be a rebellion and they'll probably shoot us and stuff like that. So we won't do that. But we don't even, after the elections, I said, everybody who supported everything that happened today and you're on my timeline, one, I will block you. And if I forget, be aware that I do not wish you well.
Yeah. Be
aware. I'm not hiding it. People that were talking to me pre the elections and then as their leanings there becoming more obvious, I was I'm not even angry. I have decided that you have no place in my life. So I have cut you off. There are no social repercussions for doing the wrong thing in Nigeria. So people go on and do the wrong thing.
Yeah.
Because they know that all they care about is if they can just win and get some small cash, everybody's opening doors for them. You don't honorable and chief because they have small money. When you know the nonsense that they've done, you can have your money, you can have your power, but you have no respect. People are shutting their doors to you. People are refusing to accord you any, people don't want to invite you to places, but that's not how Nigeria works. Yeah. And if we don't create a world where there is repercussions for doing the wrong thing, people will just keep on doing the wrong thing. Because what we have in Nigeria right now is a society where you can do the wrong thing so long as you win.
You win. Yeah.
If the
end justifies the means.
The end justifies the means, absolutely, at a ridiculous pace. So no matter what you did, very some people will be telling you, and just forget now, let's move on, let's move on. Let's focus now.
Focus on the future.
Let's focus on the future. And smart people will be telling you this, and it is so wrong. Because we need to, there's something I was going to say earlier. One of the reasons why this social consequence is important is people say, the elections is past now. Let's focus on governance. If somebody kills people to get into power,
you definitely kill to
and they are okay, and everybody accepts them, the things that they will do with power can never be right. How people get into power impacts what they do with power every freaking time. So I don't know if you guys are saying freaking, sorry, but
no,
this is a fun place.
Yeah. So I think the idea is, if there's no consequence for getting power wrong, right, then people will do anything to get power. And once they've gotten power, they will do anything to stay in power. And they will do anything they want. Because they didn't, there's no consequence. So they know that even if they do rubbish while in power, all they need to do is get out and maybe grease a few palms in the media, and they will still be celebrated. They'll still be okay. Their village people will still celebrate them when they throw money in the air. Do you get? So I think that we don't have, while we fight the government to say there has to be justice, all eyes on the judiciary, things like that, we have to ask ourselves, why are we so accepting of people who are trash, who do the wrong thing frequently? We celebrate them. We are chasing them so that they'll give us deals. We want to sell to them. We're trying to be chummy with them because we feel like access to power is the only thing that's important. Profit lines if you're a business, or deals if you're a regular guy. So and that's, I think that's our biggest challenge. And that's why sometimes I hear the argument of we have the leaders that we deserve, because I don't think that we've done enough to socially push back against. It's not even the presidents, just the small boys. We don't push back enough. Yeah.
So do you agree with the narrative that we forget easily?
It depends on how you use it. It's not like we forget. It's that we accept. Yeah. It's not like we've forgotten the thing that happened. And to be fair, that's changing a little bit. So, whether people like it or not, these 2023 elections have a straight line to the NSAS protest. Straight line.
Yeah.
So, what people did was, after the shooting, people said, okay, it seems like you have chosen the path of violence. We can't match you in violence, so we'll keep quiet. But the elections are coming. And that was a promise that young Nigerians kept. The elections are coming. And we did the work, and we pushed hard to make sure that the elections counted. So people didn't forget. People just kept it in their chest and allowed. Of course, there were still fools who... who like prioritized like, oh, I'm going to get some cash, or is a Yoruba man, or things like that. And but at the end of the day, I think that a statement was made in this last election, and people didn't forget what happened in 2020. It's the effect was, I mean, like literally direct line from so I don't buy that that's still the case now.
Fantastic. And then first of all, I'm having such a great time with this conversation, because it's just, I think that it's important that we sort of consume this, and it's important that it's said. Yeah, it's important that it's said. I feel like, personally, I've sort of stayed away from this conversation because it has a lot of things about the law. I think with associating with a lot of lawyers over time, I've come to understand that once you understand the law of a country, you can honestly manipulate the country in a sense. I don't know if you like agree with what I'm saying.
Nowadays, you don't even need to understand the law. You just need to pay the judges, but we can't move on.
Fair point. I like that. And
or
so
compromise the judges before you say I say that they bribe judges now.
Love it. Disclaimer. And I sort of just I think our take on 234 has always been from the people's perspective, right? Because we did actually go to vote, right?
Yeah.
We went through the process. We went also to the protest as well. So we're part of it all. So coming to this point, just like elections have gone past, and certain parties are like certain people involved in the process have said, you know what, I'm not comfortable with this result.
Yeah,
I'm tired of it. This didn't happen. This is wrong. This is in every way wrong. And they sought to go to court.
Yeah.
To go and lay the claims that on whatever they believed was the issue or is the issue, right?
Yeah.
Which was clear as day, to be honest. But for the sake of posterity, let somebody not say that we said that everything was bad. Do you get? But first of all, why never mind, I take that back. I think I'll just ask a more holistic question. So the elections was finished, and the issue was taken to courts. What was the law supposed to do, especially now you explaining, we understanding that the INEC is an independent body?
Yeah.
And what was being contested by some parties were the rule of INEC, the rule of INEC and the rule of law, in a sense. I don't know how that marries. Can you tell us how this marriage came about, right? So if INEC is independent, meaning that they work away from the government. Yeah. Yeah. And so you're going to sue. Are you suing INEC? Who are you suing? Why make us? I don't understand.
Okay.
Makes sense.
So just like basic principles of law, right? Yeah. From my there are two types of cases: criminal cases and civil cases. Criminal cases are cases that end with a fine or imprisonment, things like that. So we're not talking about criminal cases, we're talking about civil cases. Good. So election petitions are civil cases. Now, one of the things is like, if you take someone to court in a civil case, so let me say, if I take you to court in a civil case and I want an order against Ugo must be a party to the case. So anytime anytime you want the court to give an order that impacts a party, that party must be one of the parties that you file against.
Okay.
In election petitions, that's why you can't avoid adding INEC. So INEC must be a party to the petition. The petition is the person who is dissatisfied. So INEC must be the petitioner is the person who is dissatisfied. INEC must be a party, because if INEC is not a party, the court cannot give INEC an order. Yes. So if, for example, the order that the court wants to give is take away the certificate of return from party A and give it to party B. If INEC is not in court, the court can't give that order because INEC was not present. Good. That's why INEC In any election petition, INEC is always added. Second thing is that the winning political party always has to be there, because they are the ones that the order primarily affects. Good. And then the winning candidate has to be there as well. So you see that most of them have INEC, APC, PDP, Labour Party, wherever, Atiku, Tinubu, Peter Obi. Like that would be like how the thing was structured. So that's why you typically have those parties. Now, INEC, and that is a problem. This is another problem. INEC is in a very weird position with the elections. When people take INEC to court, what INEC's role is supposed to be is defend the integrity of the elections if the elections actually had integrity. That's it. What INEC seems to do is that INEC takes the side of a party and starts aligning their arguments with that party. That's not your job, INEC. Your job is to defend the integrity of the election that you executed and say, oh, actually, we held it on time. We complied with all of our rules. Kinikon. Not taking a side and like aligning all your arguments with the arguments of the other side, withholding documents, having to be chased, things like that. No. Right. So that's sort of like the why. I know election petitions are what we call like sui generis, meaning that like they are unique in that the Electoral Act now specifies a time period within which it must be completed. Like maybe 8 years ago, that was not the case. Because what now happened is election petitions would take 3 years. So actually that happened to Peter Obi the first time. His petition took 3 years. So by the time he finally won, 3 years had already passed. And then he became governor. And then after 1 year, they now said that he has to leave the office. He now took them to court again to say, nope, the constitution says I have 4 years. Their argument was, no, your 4 years starts counting from when we installed the first person. No, when we announced from when the election ended and we inaugurated the winner. He says, my 4 years starts counting from when I am inaugurated. So that's something that happened before. So I think post that, they were like, nope, election petitions have to happen has to be sandwiched. So I think it's now 180 days after the election has to be concluded, then appeal like 90 days, something like that. So it's now sandwiched, which is crazy because think about it. Elections held in 180,000 polling units. There's significant challenges. How do you establish with enough detail? You have to file within 21 days, maybe 50,000, 30,000, 40,000 polling units that something was wrong here. So we have a lot of challenges with how our election petitions are structured at the presidential level. Okay, have I answered the question?
Yeah.
Okay, fair. I didn't want to just like start, keep on going.
I think I wanted you to keep going because I'm just like, I'm enjoying maybe you should keep going.
Okay, because what I wanted to talk about was now like the details of this election petition, right? In summary, Peter Obi was saying a couple of things with different levels of difficulty in like proving. The first one is that INEC did not comply with the Electoral Act and therefore the election should be cancelled. That there was substantial non-compliance with the Electoral Act and therefore the election should be cancelled. I think the crux of that was that INEC is a body created by the Electoral Act, right? Now, the Electoral Act says that, or by the Constitution, and the Electoral Act is like a good. But I think INEC is created by the Electoral Act. I can check later. Irrelevant to this conversation. But when a body created by a law makes guidelines pursuant to the law that created it. So, for example, I didn't use an example. The Electoral Act says that INEC will issue guidelines for the purpose of an election. The way that's interpreted is that those guidelines that INEC issues are laws like the act that created INEC. So they are not just things that will be trifled with. They are law. That's a simple rule of interpretation. Good. So INEC created its guidelines and said that results will be transmitted, right, from polling units. I think I took screenshots that day, and I can't find them anymore. But I think the one is 38. Good. 38 of the electoral guidelines for this election, section 38. On completion of the polling unit voting and results procedures, the presiding officer shall electronically transmit or transfer the result of the polling unit direct to the collation system as prescribed by the commission. As at the day the president was announced winner, more than 40% of polling unit results had not been uploaded to IREV.
Yeah.
So, if they made an amendment to the Electoral Act in 2022, and the entire, in fact, like 70% of the weight of that amendment was so that results would be transmitted electronically. then INEC comes around and does not transmit results electronically. This is the day that the winner was announced, not the day of the election. Meaning that the day of election is probably like 30% that had been transmitted electronically. So the argument from Peter Obi's side was, this is substantial non-compliance. You have failed to comply with a mandatory provision of the Electoral Act. Therefore, this election should not, you get. But the court said, no, this does not amount to substantial non-compliance. Forget that the Labour Party went to INEC and said, give us the polling unit results that you used to announce Tinubu as the winner of the election. INEC gave them a lot, but then 18,000 of those results were blurred or blank.
Wow.
And in one of the cross-examinations, the Labour Party team, like, he gave the witness of, I think, INEC and said, read these results. I can't read. Okay. You read this one. I can't read. You read this one. I can't read. Okay. So if you cannot read your polling unit results, how did you use these results to announce? And the combined value of the votes on those results were about 2.5 million. And the gap between the winner and the was up to 2 million. So that already is substantial non-compliance to us that are here, just like using our brain. But to the tribunal, it was not. And that's why they are an appeal. Because what they are basically saying is, well, it's impossible to prove non-compliance. Because what else could they not have done that they said they would do that you would have agreed that they did not comply? Because this was a key element. Like, this was a part of the reason why public funds were allocated.
Yes.
So that's one of the legs on which they were standing. I think one of the stronger legs, and it didn't work. The second leg that they were standing on was Tinubu even qualified to run?
Yeah, I remember that one.
Yeah. So I think for Labour Party, the key question on Tinubu's qualification was the money laundering fine. Now, I don't know if I have the screenshots of that one, but that one is in the Constitution, right? But the law basically says if someone is under a fine or like a couple of other things, they are not eligible to run in the election. This is subsection C or something like that. There is a subsection before this one that says if you've been convicted in the last 10 years, you're not qualified to run the election. One says if you've been convicted. The second one says if you are under a fine. What the tribunal said was, well, Tinubu may have been under a fine, but it's irrelevant because he was not convicted of an offense. So they are saying the only fine that this section was referring to is a criminal fine, not a civil forfeiture like what happened to Tinubu, which, depending on how you look at it, goes against the spirit of the law, to my mind. Maybe because of where I'm like, how I'm inclined. But the reason why Tinubu was fined was because of money laundering charges.
Yeah.
Nobody enters into an agreement with the states to forfeit money if they did not commit an offense.
Yeah.
But sometimes the states do that because maybe they struck a deal and whatever.
Yeah.
So, and the fact that the Constitution structured one side and said, if you are convicted, and then the second side it says, if you're under fine. It could have said, if you're under a criminal fine, or if you were convicted and fined. It didn't say that.
They're saying it's not clear.
No, they are saying they're interpreting it as criminal fine, which seems like a very specific interpretation that I don't know that they would have given to everybody else. So, and I think that was the second issue that Peter Obi's team was like putting their leg on, and then also again one of the reasons why they appealed.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm looking for I have the 4 issues. Then the third one was whether Tinubu was duly elected. That's whether he won the election. And this one and whether the election were invalid as a result of corrupt practices are two that I feel extremely shaky, extremely hard to prove. And I didn't look at the filings of Labour Party, so I don't even know. Because what you're trying to establish in these ones is, for example, did he win the election? Is that you will find enough errors in like polling unit results, for example, that show that he did not get the amount of votes that he said he got in 21 days.
How is that possible?
It's extremely difficult to do. So I think what they did was, what they did here was they had 2 states, Rivers State, right, where polling units results and what is announced by INEC completely different. Polling units, because, okay, good, I helped with the competition of Rivers State's polling unit results. And from polling units, we did all the calculation. Peter Obi won clearly. I think that was the public information now.
Shout out to Wiki.
But that's public information, right? Good, yeah. And then, but when INEC announced, they announced Tinubu as the winner of Rivers State. I think it's one of that states like that. But I worked on Rivers State's one. Now, this is not a local, it's not a ward, it's not a local government, it's not a polling unit. It is a whole state. Like what they just said 6 states. One whole state. INEC was so significantly compromised. So what I think Labour Party team did was they said, look at these 2 states. We can see clear manipulation of the results in 2 states. Now, look at these 18,000 polling units results. They are blood or blank. We can't even tell what they did. So we cannot assume that this was correct. INEC has not shown, not given us enough data to prove that they did the right thing. And we have evidence that they did not in the ruling. And I think that's one of the worst parts of this. The tribunal did not chastise INEC, who was a party, to
That's
say,
like chastise Obi.
like
Exactly.
I remember when they told Obi that if you are saying the elections were compromised, can you prove how you got your own results in a compromised election?
Do you get, like, they attacked Atiku's team and they attacked, but INEC was right there. Nobody said, INEC, how could Labour Party have won in a whole state and you announced, nobody chastised them till today. The electoral officers in Rivers State, I don't know if they've been arrested. I'm sure even if they arrested them, none of them has been convicted. Again, when it goes back to consequences, nobody should be able, whether you are Wiki or you are, I don't know who you are, should be able to just blatantly steal elections of a whole state and get away with it. It makes no sense. Because what you're now saying is, Joshua gets announced. What you're telling
He doesn't care.
it doesn't matter how you do it.
Just announce and let us
Give
move
us
on.
something.
Do you understand? So they couldn't even stuff ballot boxes, which I'm sure that they did as well. They just said, you know what, we are already losing so much in this state. Let's just go to Collation Center and cancel and rewrite the result without any basis. So those 2 last legs, extremely difficult to prove in the context of a presidential election. So I think what the Labour Party tried to do was, we have data that says they lost here, but they said that they won. And then we have these 18,000 polling units that we can't even see anything. Like, basically, this guy did not win. Like, you get, deduct these 2 states and then think about these 2.4 million votes that we don't know. Like, like it may not be us, but it's like, you get,
clear.
It's clear that there's something wrong. And I think that the tribe, and I don't want to hold brief for the tribunal. I understand the weight of what was on their shoulders. To cancel a presidential election in Nigeria is a huge responsibility.
It's a monumental decision to make.
That would require a ton of integrity and a ton of, like, presence of mind to say we need to do the right thing. And I think that's one of our biggest problems, is how short-sighted we are. And we've been short-sighted from, like, when the foundations of, like, Nigeria were laid. We had founding fathers who did not care about a united nation. Listen to videos of Tafawa Balewa speak about Igbos and think about, they all wanted to be the big boy.
Yeah.
They were trying to outdo each
They wanted
other.
to outdo, so Awolowo, Nnamdi Azikiwe, and I think the dynamics of how the regional forces did not work out for us. Short-sightedness, because we're still suffering the effect of that division today.
Division.
Right? So now when we think about, I wrote about on it, I don't know if I can find as well. When we think about the tribunal's ruling, say, what's the easy thing? The easy thing to do is just say, we couldn't find enough evidence to go away. We don't want to scatter an election. But even if you did the right thing, right, and maybe say, for the next 2 or 3 weeks, they're protesting and they're blah, 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 blah. If you think about it long term, what we have now is one of the worst places we can be, where we have basically said, if you are announced winner of the election, find any way to be announced winner of the election, then you have a 95% chance of holding on to power, no matter how horrible INEC was. So somebody can say, do you know what? Let them vote.
Yes.
When they finish voting, don't disturb them.
Yeah.
Let them take the paper to Collation Center.
At
Collation Center, we'll scatter everything.
Yes.
We'll go there and rewrite. Just imagine. In fact, they can wait when they move from this ward coalition to local government coalition. So maybe they only have 20 or 30 places to scatter. And that's what they were doing. They will invade the place, hold people at gunpoint, and say, you will change this thing now. Imagine that. So if that's the decision we are just setting ourselves up for more violent elections, more voter apathy because nobody wants to go and die for. Like, how many weeks do they do hashtag for you? Do you get? So I think that is a big mistake they've made, but they've gone to the Supreme Court. If I'm being honest, I have no faith.
Make me understand what these different courts are. I don't know anything, right? Let me be honest. What is the Court of Appeal and what is the role of the Supreme Court? So that we understand the gravity of why should I be happy that this is going to the Supreme Court right now?
Okay. A simple structure of like our judiciary is we have state courts and federal courts. In terms of just a straight line, the state courts are the states. Let's say magistrate courts, state high courts. They handle things that are for the states. Let me put it that way.
Exclusive to the state.
Like small things, like they have their own jurisdiction. Like crimes are typically handled first in like magistrate or state courts. Then you have the federal high court, the federal court. It's on the same level as the state high court, but it handles special like category of cases, like things that have to do with like company allied matters act, like any issue arising out of the Company Allied Matters Act that have to do with, they go to the federal high court. So that is a federal court, but like on the same level as state court. And then if something happens at the state court, at the magistrate's court, you go to state high court, right? If something happens at state high court or federal high court, you take it to the Court of Appeal. Now the Court of Appeal is that is like what it sounds, is a court that hears most of the appeals, right? So I appeal to the Court of Appeal, good. Then if you are not satisfied at the Court of Appeal, for certain types of cases, you have a right to take it to Supreme Court. So for example, if it's something that has to do with fundamental human rights, you can take it to Supreme Court as a matter of right. If you are sentenced to death, you can always go to Supreme Court as a matter of right.
As a person, as a normal, I can go to Supreme Court if I was sentenced to death.
Yes, if you were sentenced to death, you could appeal to the Supreme Court.
Hey, I'm ready.
But if you're sentenced to like 7 years,
they will give us space.
If you're sentenced to like 7 years in prison, for example, you would have to apply to Supreme Court like for leave to appeal to say, grant me permission to bring this matter to your court because they're a very big court. And think about all the whole country, all the cases that they have to hear over there. So in terms of election petition, for election petitions, the Presidential Election Petition, the Court of Appeal functions as the first court. Right? It functions as the first court in that like layer. So it doesn't start from low. Those guys are the first court, exactly. And then after those guys, it goes to Supreme Court. If the federal government and the state are like fighting over anything, they go straight to the Supreme Court. So those are like, that's how like it's cascades. Yeah.
So how long will this Supreme Court appeal? Now that Atiku and Obi have gone to...
I think it's like 90 days, the entire thing. 90 days. I think it's like 90 days. First one is 180 days, second one is 90 days. So before the end of this year, by and large, you should have heard. Exactly, you should have heard.
Is there any hope, like glimmer of hope? Just saying, put it out there, like, logically, looking at this now, is there any glimmer of hope that the Supreme Court might make a decision different from that of the Court of Appeal? I mean, the Tribunal Court.
There's always hope.
Yes.
But I would place it as highly unlikely that they overturn. I feel that it's highly unlikely. Because the first thing that the tribunal did is that they struck out a lot of like witness statements that a lot of the evidence that witnesses provided, they struck them out for, I can't remember the technical reason, which is, I don't want to say stupid, but it is stupid. Technicalities are fine. They exist for a reason, blah, blah, blah. But when something is weighty, we're talking about the future of a whole of 200 million people. Throw technicalities out the window. You can chastise the lawyers and say, you should have filed this 2 days earlier. You should have filed this 3 days earlier. But because of what is in front of us, we will consider all the evidence. And literally, when they said out their ruling, they first said, we will not make this ruling on technicalities. Then they went ahead and made 80% of the ruling on technicalities because they struck out so much of the witness statements on oath of Obi and of Atiku. Like, doesn't make any sense. So there is that, like, always that slight hope. For example, Atiku is currently trying to get Chicago State University to release Tinubu's records. Now, I think what that is both a legal and a social strategy. If Tinubu's only certificate on file is the Chicago State University certificate, only certificate, you know why? Because the certificate he used when he was running for governor of Lagos State, we found out that those schools don't exist.
Yeah.
And it was already in the news. So if he had used it for this one, people would have dragged. As in, if I used it for this one, he would have been gone.
Yeah.
So he didn't use it. The only unimpeached certificate he has is the Chicago State University certificate. Atiku has gone there to say, Chicago State says he graduated. And he graduated. Okay, sure. But what did you use to get admission? We want to know who this student is.
What are his records?
Who did you give a certificate? Because the certificate that he presented to INEC is not the same structure as other certificates that CSU issues to their students. So I think when I read what they are asking for, they are saying, one, give us any certificate that looks like this certificate. And then give us records to show that this person was in your school. Right? So I think the idea is they want to uncover that this guy is not a student. Now, if they're able to uncover clearly that Tinubu's certificates, only certificates on file that he used to meet the minimum requirement, right? They can create enough outrage in the country and apply pressure on the justices and then say, you have to admit this evidence. It is too significant to ignore. Do you get? And that is why Tinubu has sent his lawyers to try and lock down, because we were supposed to have heard on Friday. They were supposed to turn in the records on Friday. And then Tinubu filed an emergency appeal and they extended it to Monday. And I think they will hear both sides on Tuesday and then they'll give a ruling this coming Friday. So the whole idea is delay this as much as you can so that it is not filed with, clearly there's something wrong there, because there's no reason why you should be hiding your certificate.
Stellar certificate.
After all, first class graduates. So I think that is Atiku's play. Peter Obi's play is, I think Peter Obi as well also lost in tribunal the first time he ran. And he's just like, do you know what? I've been here before. I think we have enough to show that like these guys didn't comply and we'll force it at Supreme Court. I've listened to some of the Supreme Court justices speak recently. I don't have any faith in them. I think they're only going to do the right thing if they feel intense pressure. If they feel
all eyes on the judiciary.
Do you get like intense pressure? But right now they don't. I don't think that they do. So I don't know. So you're asking me like what's my own opinion? It was always slim chances. When you are going, like when you lose in the first one, it becomes slimmer. So now it's just slimmer chances. Yeah.
What I think that this would be maybe my final question. I don't know if you have any. But what is the repercussion? What do you think would be the repercussion of all of this if eventually this gets to the Supreme Court and God forbid, let's think worst case scenarios. I'm very optimistic, right? I'm very optimistic about Nigeria because we talk about this from time to time, and I'm always about change can happen. I was speaking to a few, just to really take just a little tidbit, right? I was talking to a few of my friends today, and one is in the process of jackpot, one has already jackpot already. And I was just talking about being hopeful. And they were telling me, now no get sense, they hope see Nigeria go better. And I asked them, there's this quote that I saw, I think you posted it actually. You think that this is not verbatim, you think that what you're going through in this time in history is terrible until you read. And you find out that people really went through hellfire. And I was saying to my friends that if, maybe I'm going spiritual here, sometimes we forget to be grateful because we do not know, right? My mother lived through the Biafran War. I'm very Igbo, and that's why I like to talk about it from literally this tribal part right now, because I think we all saw that period in Nigeria very differently from anywhere in the world, in the country you were at the time. You see it differently, right? I was very both my parents are very Igbo. I have aunties, I have uncles who saw through the Biafran War, or the Biafran Civil War as it's called, and I know that right now today we can't do that. A lot of Nigerians will not stand for that. Say, you go and band way, so go and fight who? At what time? Right? But we have progressed from them. I don't know if, and when I say progression, I take it very seriously, because as much as some things have changed, not everything has changed, right? And I say, if we can come from that to where we are now I haven't saying, well, on social media, shut up, the president can say anything. We've lived through, I was born during some part of the military regime, maybe not completely. At least I know when Abacha died, right? I know that it was terrible then to say you can't talk about the government. It was like the monarchy of Benin. You cannot gossip about the king. So you cannot even say any. Once you utter one word, they behead you somewhere, they shoot you somewhere. So a lot has changed. It might not be in the ways that we want them to change, but change has come.
Yeah.
Some level of change has come. And so I'm hopeful for that, right? But as it were right now, we understand that anything, she can hit the fan real quick. It's Nigeria. Anything can happen. Some people say, oh, let us wait till the economy is stable. The economy is never stable. It has never been stable. And to continue to shake, anything you want to do it right now, right? I'm saying, let's be naysayers, let's be negative first, because sometimes make it be like, say, we know anticipate the success, but it needs to come. Do you understand? But a case where this petition goes to the Supreme Court and nothing good in a sense comes out of it, what do you think is what do you think the repercussion of this will look like based off of the law in Nigeria?
Law or just like life?
Anyone.
Okay.
Let's do that. Anyone.
Okay. I think your friends are right in a sense.
Yeah.
When they say only a fool like believes, right? And I think this is what I mean. It depends on how you look at history.
Yes.
So if you look at history from the perspective of my lifetime, having hope is an insanely foolish thing.
Yes.
Because we've been on a downward trajectory by and large for like 20 years now. Like economy-wise, right? And I have a friend, every time I go to Toronto, he'll say to me, Ejiro, he's like 35 now. He says, the reason why he didn't even look back, he said Nigeria took his 20s. He said he made up his mind that Nigeria will not take his 30s. Because he didn't want to wake up, be 40 one day, and still be driving on bad roads, not have lights, still be hustling gen, buying fuel, things like that. So that's the decision that he made. I do not have faith in Tinubu's ability to lead Nigeria. Forget about the fact that he clearly was involved with some drug stuff back in the day. He's forged all these certificates. We don't really know who it is. Those things are just like on the side. Even if you said to me, okay, Ejiro, forget the fact that his party and him, as far as I'm concerned, like executed this wicked strategy to like basically steal an election. And I've said it multiple times, and that's my belief. Even if you said to me, okay, Ejiro, forgive all of that. If the man sat in the office, do you think he would do a good job? And I keep on saying, he will not do a good job. I don't believe he will do a good job because he has never done a good job. Lagos, his brainchild, his baby, has been within the control of his party for like 24 years now. Is Lagos a good place to live?
No.
Do we have good roads?
No.
Do we have power?
No.
Do we have clean water?
No.
Like, security. What do we have? Do we have security? Do we have a transportation system that matches us? We have Blue Rail now.
20 years.
But it took 20 years to build. And it's 5 times more expensive than the comparable ones like in other parts of Africa. So like when I look at like the details, and this was Lagos that had everything.
Yeah.
Lagos has everything. Lagos has been a capital city before, and Lagos has been the economic capital of Africa, of Nigeria, and maybe even Africa for like 50 years. And then this person who couldn't make Lagos that had all the tools better, who still can't. You now give him Nigeria, that is a significantly more complex problem. So every time people talk about he built Lagos, what did he build? The year before he ran for the election, right? The year before he ran, Lagos was ranked second worst city to live in the world in all the countries that were ranked.
And that's below other war-torn cities.
And there are war-torn cities in the equation. What did he build? Did he build the Third Mainland Bridge? No, he didn't. Did he build the Echo Bridge? No, he didn't. Did he build Lekki Expressway? No, he didn't. That's somebody else's vision. Did he build what did he build? Is Lasuth his product? No, it's not. Is the Jakonde Estate his product? No, it's not. Is there mass housing schemes? Like, what is Lagos?
What is legacy?
What is legacy? There's no legacy. No real transformation. You now give him a bigger problem at a time when he's significantly older, has less to lose and less to give.
And Nigeria is cash strapped.
And we are cash strapped, So, and the thing is already playing out. The victory for him was winning the election. I told somebody, when you look at Tinubu, you know that Tinubu has been planning to be president for a long time.
Very long time.
When you listen to Peter Obi has been planning to solve Nigeria's problems for a long time. And it shows very clearly in how they both articulate on the issues. Everybody knew that fuel subsidy was supposed to be removed. Tinubu opposed it in 2011, fought against it. Him and his band of, when Jonathan removed it, because all he cared about was winning an election, unseating Jonathan. He did not care about Nigeria's problems. Yes. Nobody who knew the right thing then should have fought against it then. And then come back then when we could afford to actually do it proper, like mass palliative schemes to help people cushion the effects. Then years later, when we are cash strapped, we are spending 95+% of our revenue on paying off debts. That's when you now want to remove subsidy. And you have failed at it. You have failed at unifying the exchange rate as well. Because you don't have the mind, you don't have the balls. At the end of the day, you know, like, where Nigeria is, we needed compassionate, smart leadership. Look at the size of the government. This cabinet is the biggest cabinet in our history.
Yes.
And we are the poorest that we've been since probably 1966.
The size of government is too much.
The size of government is too big. And then now you've gone on a road trip, traveling with your friends everywhere, and making fake deals that don't mean anything. No country invests because you shook hands.
Yeah.
Because are you going to force the companies? So he goes and shake hands with the UAE and shake hands with Dubai. Somebody else in Dubai. Are you going to force the companies there to invest in your country?
Because they look at your books and
they look at the country.
And they're like, no.
Do you have electricity? No. Do you have good road network? No. Do you have power? No. What do you have that makes sense for anybody to come and invest in your country? You have not fixed your problem.
You have 2 foreign exchange rates.
Yes, you have 2 foreign exchange rates. We still have issues with the Emirates Airlines because of repatriation of funds.
Yeah.
When you just count all these issues that you have not sat down to solve, you don't solve complex problems by declarations. Yes, I declare subsidy is over, but subsidy is not over. I declare exchange. You can't declare those problems away. So just the ability to do the work is not there. So if he's the one in power, except by some master stroke of luck, and I don't think so. If he's the one in power, we are heading into very dangerous territory. His entire team is focused on enjoyment.
And
I love it.
I said it now. Lagos boys is enjoyment
and propaganda. Yes. They want to act like they are doing something when they are not actually doing anything. And I think that will be our unfortunate reality if we're stuck with these guys. And they will do this for 4 years. And then when the elections come, we'll have ridiculously violent elections.
They'll do worse again.
We'll have ridiculously violent elections. So if somebody says, Ejiro, should you have hope? Yes, have hope. Because hope is good. But if somebody is saying, I want to make a decision for my life, where do I think Nigeria will be? People said, the dollar will be 1,000 naira by the end of the year. We have not reached October. It's already there.
It's already there.
It's already there. So and our incomes are not increasing. We're earning naira now.
You're earning naira. So you're losing.
You're losing. The price
your pension is in naira.
Everything has gone up. Right? And when things go up in Nigeria, we know historically they don't come down.
Never.
So things are worsening. We already had a net of 80 million people living in poverty.
It's going to be worse.
The net has widened. You can't build. It's like, I work in tech. So one of the things that used to push tech in Nigeria for a long time was we have a population of 200 million people. Investors are crazy about that.
The number.
But there's a reason why our companies have capped.
Yeah.
Anybody that works in tech knows that we are not where we thought we would be when the things started booming. Because all of them are selling to me and you.
Yeah.
All the bank apps and
all of us.
It is the same category that they are trying to milk. There's so much you can milk. If we don't if this 200 million does not actually become at least 80 million people in the middle class, then what are they going to buy? Countries grow when their people have money. Yeah. When the people are poor, the countries can't grow.
Simple logic.
Forget about anything else. Even if our GDP multiplies by 10, even if you have only government and 1,000 individuals contributing to GDP, then everybody else is just suffering. It doesn't make sense. At the end of the day, companies will always have a cap. That's why if you look at different books and see financial institutions, banks hitting record profits. Meanwhile, the entire real sector is shutting down. In this year alone, is it Pfizer?
Yeah.
One of them left.
Yeah.
One of them left already. P&G. I can't remember. Was it P&G?
Yeah.
Like, that is the real sector. We can't afford to buy their cream anymore. It doesn't make sense for them to make it here. Do you get? So whoever wants to buy, go and import and sell. Like, that's what's happening. That's our reality. We still have people who today earn 15,000 naira, 10,000 naira, 8,000 naira.
That's even below minimum wage.
And our minimum wage is not enough to have a normal. How much is your rent? How much is your food? So like that is transportation, and that's the reality of most Nigerians. And that's why it's like if you ask like, oh, what like these guys don't have and every day they move around like long convoys.
Yeah.
There is body language that shows you what happens behind the scenes.
Yeah.
That's why if a leader wanted to say, you know what, we need to behave ourselves. Everybody needs to stop spending anyhow. We can't afford it. He will his team will first be the brand ambassadors. He would have had a small cabinet. He would have had they would have been conservative. The legislature, no cars for you this year.
Yeah.
Everything would have been showing, but it's clear what they are doing.
Look at the Senate president when he first did his first video. He came out with a convoy of Mercedes-Benz, brand new. And you can't tell the average Nigerian to tighten his belt.
Meanwhile,
when you're living lavishly.
There's somebody that is on my timeline. He's an acquaintance, I'm kind of acquaintance. Super duper. He's a big investor. He's one of the startup guys. Has a ton of money. He didn't support Tinubu in the election, but he was like, elections are done now. Let's focus on like country work, blah 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 blah. He's been very optimistic about Tinubu. Obviously, I'm not, and we always argue. We go back and forth. He was telling me like, oh, Ejiro, I'm in New York right now, and the entire government is here.
Yeah.
That's what he said. He said the entire government is here. He said, I need to fully move back to the US. He said these guys are not serious.
You're not serious now.
Just 1 or 2 days in their presence, I just showed him that these guys they're actually not here to do anything. There's a will. Like, honestly, Tinubu is not there anymore. When you see him, you know.
No.
All this traveling he's doing is because he knows that his legitimacy is seriously in question. He's establishing legitimacy. I'm the president. There's no real interest in, we need to fix this country. And if we don't have that from the top, like, what kind of luck do you want to have? Our crude production is still below 1 million barrels per day. We are not meeting our OPEC quota. We're not making enough money.
Ribadu said that over 400,000 barrels are go missing in Nigeria in a day.
Literally, we need a president that is like, I'm picking these 2-3 sectors and we are getting things done. So, but look at his ministers. It was a reward scheme.
See the Minister of Mineral. He doesn't know anything.
It's a reward scheme.
Yeah, Minister of FCT that come and collect.
He has gathered himself with his guys, the people who helped him get into power,
his
friends, his cronies. You know, and at the end of the day, what we're going to have again is another straw that is just sucking out whatever is left. And it's sort of a thing of, let's do our own before the thing all burns, collapses. So, to answer your question about like, that's how I think it. That's what I think. And so if I'm talking to young people, I'm always like, I'm not saying you should jackpot, but what are your alternatives, right? Because there's a lot that is not within our control, you know, and the revolution is not easy. Even if you did the revolution today and you said, we'll scatter everywhere, this person must leave. It's not easy. The work is a lot. So I understand people's unwillingness, you know, but yeah, I'm not a giver of hope when it comes to Nigeria. I'm not. I want to tell you the truth. If I look into our future, if I could see something like, oh, maybe, but we can't. Somebody doesn't say, at this point, I was reading on Twitter, maybe we just need to get $50 billion from IMF to help us.
What
and what somebody said is, oh, then they'll use $45 billion to build the new, because we have a revenue problem now. Yeah. But our historical problem is a spending problem.
Yeah.
And I always said, people when people are saying, act like Nigeria needs a miracle. If for 8 years we had a government that said the budget for education is 200 billion, we'll spend 200 billion on education. If we did that 8 years straight, no, I'm not talking about any fantastic futuristic thinking or vision. No, where we are now, if we just had a government that for 8 years said the money that we want to allocate for education will be spent on education, Nigeria will be, you'll be able to, as in Nigeria will be like a dream to you.
Yeah.
Our roads will be like a dream to you. If you say the money for roads we spent on roads, if that is all we're doing, we'll be in such a... But what we have is the money for roads will be spent on my house in Dubai, and we'll corner 80% of the... At the end of the day, by the time it filters down to the bottom...
To the last person, they do rubbish.
There's nothing else. Look at our major... This Lekki-Ekpe Expressway is the major expressway of the biggest city in West Africa. And it is a mess from the beginning to the end.
Potholes. Traffic. One way in, one way out.
So, literally. Yeah. So I think that's all. Yes, our education system is bad. We still haven't fixed power. Our roads are bad. You know,
they've not fixed security.
We're getting more insecure. I'm hearing there's more terrorism in Niger State now. Like, so where am I going to pull out hope, to give anybody? I don't want to deceive people. So my own perspective is that things look very gloomy for Nigeria. Is it possible to transform a nation? Yes.
But other nations have done it.
15 years of consistent work can completely change. And what they know about Nigerians is, once Nigerians can see that, we're going in the right direction, people will be coming to come and put in their hand to help.
Momentum.
But we are going in the wrong direction. So maybe the tribunal, the Supreme Court does something. Maybe Tinubu wakes up in the middle of the night and says, I want to leave a good legacy. Guys, let's do some work. Maybe. I don't know. But from where I sit now, they continue on this road that they are on, where they think that lying about working is more important than working. Nah.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
So on one of our previous episodes of 234 Essential, someone wrote a fan mail to us, and we're talking. I think this is part where you get passionate, by the way. And the question went thus: if you were the president of Nigeria, a governor in Nigeria, or a Lagos state or a local government chairman in Nigeria, what would you do at these three different levels?
Okay. Let me start top, bottom. Okay. I'll just pick specific things.
Okay.
If I was president, I think the focus for me would be, like, I'll tell you what I'm thinking, and then I'll tell you the things I'll change. How do we make it ridiculously easy for people, for Nigerians and even like foreigners to do business in Nigeria? What are the things that we need to change? Because industry drives growth.
Of course.
So I'll think about it. I'll structure it like this. I think I wrote about it recently. I said Africa. I was talking about Africa, and I said, but I'll say Nigeria. Nigeria needs to feed itself, and Nigeria needs to power itself. So I would think ridiculous investments in agriculture. What can we do? What kind of loans can we give? What kind of investors do we need to attract in terms of farmland and stuff, right? What kind of training do we need to do for our farmers, right? To help what kind of investments do we need to make in agriculture for us to be able to produce certain things for ourselves? For example, tomatoes, pepper, so that we don't import, right? Okay. So that, I think, for me, prioritizing feeding Nigeria would be like my first thing. To make this work, you probably need to do other things. So I did some work recently. So I have a bit of like some consulting work around agriculture. Now, our food basin is in the north, by and large, right? And then we have a ton of people in the south who have to buy that food. Yeah. If the people in the south buy a lot of their food from the north, even the north gets wealthier, right? What are the challenges that we have? About 40% of fruits, vegetables, and stuff like that, even more than that, is destroyed in transition due to poor logistics system. Because we use road for everything. So can we create rails that we don't politicize, that connects farms and farms to markets? So north to south, buyers to sellers, like rails that can move things quickly, not just like and that is accessible. Can we fix our roads? And then when it comes to governor, we're like, what are the federal connecting roads that we need to build to connect major food areas to like the rails and whatever, so that they can actually move their produce? I think that's something I'll think about. Then power. So for example, storing fruits like tomatoes, veggies, stuff like that requires sometimes cold storage. But the cost of accessibility of power, almost zero. Unit cost of power, extremely expensive. Many countries in the world, the entire continent of Europe, most of Asia, entire North America, most of South America, and some countries in the middle, in the part of Africa that we call the Middle, that's part of the Middle East, I figured out 24 hours power. What that tells me is that this is not a out of our world problem. It is a solvable problem. How do we solve the power problem? And it might not mean that you can do 100% power across Nigeria in 4 years, but you may be able to say, I can guarantee Nigerians that in 4 years, you will have everywhere in Nigeria 12 hours power supply. And some places will have more. But like or maybe 3 states will have, like, we can create a plan and actually like fix it. It is generation, transmission, distribution. We can actually create a plan, and like other people have done it, so it means it's not impossible. So I'll solve, I think, energy and power. Then that is for your today. The third thing is, how are you preparing yourself for the world that is coming? And that's education. So I think if I was president, I would focus on, I've talked about food and the things that surround, which is transportation, then energy and power, just like for industry in general. Then I would do education. Even if we don't get to the point, we talk about food now, where we are, transforming everything we bring from the ground into stuff that is usable. So for example, cocoa to chocolate and stuff. That has to be in like your framework for agriculture. We can say today we want to be the largest exporter of cocoa in Africa. That can be an ambition for us. But in the framework, we should also say in the next 10 years, we want to be the largest producer of chocolates. Do you get? We need to turn from just producing things from our ground to. So I think that's something else. Then I think something else you would explore because of just where we are today is all our natural minerals. Who is monitoring them?
Yeah.
So our gold, all those other ones, we need to put a cap on all those things and say, all these private individuals that are just like milking us and doing things illegally, stop that. The country needs to start making Nigeria. So I think that's something else that will change just in terms of development. There are a lot of other things that will have to change. But I think then making that investment in education, because we are just so far behind. Again, people who don't know.
Yes.
And the decisions that they will make will be reflective of people who don't know. So we need to have a more educated population. The way Awolowo did
full education
in Southwest, it will be across Nigeria. It will not be a joke. It will be compulsory. If you put your children on the road to hawk, they'll be kidnapped. Yes, there's no reason why your children are hawking on express. It will be full. And I think like when you educate a country at a high quality consistently, then the way they begin to behave changes. The things that they allow changes. So I think that's something else. There are other things that come to mind, but I think from a presidency level, I will be thinking, how can we position ourselves to be able to feed ourselves?
Yes.
So that things like the war in Ukraine is not increasing the price of food in Nigeria. So that we depend less. Then clearly, the last one, then I'll move on here from this. On the energy one, there's the electricity and then there's like the fuel and stuff. Nigeria has to convert crude to diesel and fuel for its own use. Period. It is such a ridiculous thing to me that we don't do. And we have 4 refineries that are dead. I will sit whoever is in charge down and I'll be like, bro, can this thing be done? Let's call all the experts into a room. Can we make these refineries work? Yes, we can. If you say that we can, what do you need to make it work? You tell us. If we give you the money that you need to do this thing, you will not leave this country. You will never leave Nigeria. We will jail you. If you blow our money, and I will make your lives a hell. Like literally, you will not play with us like that. So you tell us the timeline. How long will it take you? What do you need to get our refineries to work? If you now find out that, getting refineries to work does not make any sense, might as well build new ones. Because sometimes that happens with like all these things. Then we now say, okay, let's shut them down and build new ones. But like we'll make a decision around that because it doesn't make sense that I was looking at the energy charts for like across the world and just like seeing like the countries, West Africa is in the top 5 or top 6 in production of like crude
oil.
Then when they now come to petrol, we're not even there. And the chart has like 12. We're not even there. So we're not making enough for ourselves. We're not making enough for anybody. We're just letting them carry our crude. So what now happens is when crude goes up, when the price of crude goes up, other countries that produce crude are happy. Why? Because they refine for themselves. So locally, the price won't go up.
Yeah.
So when they sell, they earn more money. They can invest. Because we buy fuel, when the price of crude goes up, we're not happy. Because we sell the crude, we buy fuel that's more expensive.
Yeah.
So it's such a stupid problem to have. So that's something else that like I would be like, this one is like so I think power, food, and then just that infrastructure layer, and then education, that's like what I would do as president. As governor, I have to use Lagos, I'm sorry. I've not been to Lagos in too long. I think a governor has fewer powers, but let's assume that as a governor, you are limited. So you're more like an administrator. 60 to 65% of Lagos revenue comes from collecting taxes. If you look at other comparable cities, right, like 20% or 30% will come from taxes. Most of it will come from service charges because the states are doing things for their people. So the people have to pay. Lagos does not do things for Lagosians. So they just collect our taxes, right? So you see services, things like that are what other people do. So for example, like you should not have borehole you should have water.
Run through that.
So let's just say that we are where we are. So we are an administrator of funds. Good. Lagos is small enough for me to do this, and I've been thinking about it for a long time. If I had day one, I would say Google Maps. Google. I want to see data of Lagos, right? It may be local government, showing me where are the worst roads in Lagos. So let's say worst is red, then it will now be going down. Then sit down with our Ministry of Works and say, you're seeing this red like this. We're going to start from the darkest red, based on within the constraints of the money that we have, to the least red. How do we improve road transportation in Lagos first? I feel like the quality of life of Lagosians would increase so significantly if Lagosians did not worry about traffic. Yeah. So freaking significantly. So what that would help you do is, if these are the worst spots, then you now say, okay, the plan may not just be road. You may not say, no. For us to fix our traffic problems at large, we actually need maybe rail.
Yeah.
Okay, how long does rail take to build? What can we do with our waterways at scale?
Yeah.
And then what can we do with our roads? Do you understand? So that kind of, I think that, so first of all, governors should be thinking about bad roads. But because our governors don't do anything, they don't have any other work. Think about bad roads. Why are our roads bad? There are other places that don't have bad roads. Yeah. Is it a money problem? Is it a quality problem? We're not the only beachside country in the world. So why are our roads so bad? And I think for me, Lagos would, my first priority would be fixing, because you don't really have control over energy, for example. Yes. First priority would be fixing our transportation network. First thing. I think for me, the second thing would just be education. Because state governments have a lot of control over primary and secondary education. The quality of schools that we have in Nigeria are preparing Nigerians to be typists.
Clerks.
Listen, shorthand.
They are not preparing Nigerians. At least you get public education in Lagos is not preparing Lagosians to impact the world. And that is why Africa doesn't create anything, because we don't nurture people enough. I think that's again just on a local level would be education. It's not just about forcing people to go to school. It's about what is the quality of the education that they have. So I think that for me, that would be something else. And then this one is a big fight as president or as governor. Our civil service.
Oh Lord.
So this one is one that you just need to know that if you do something that is bad and you work, you can survive.
Yeah.
But if you do something that is bad and there are no results, that's the end of your political career. But our civil service needs someone that can say, I'm going to sacrifice my political career on the altar of fixing our civil service.
Yeah.
There are too many useless people in our civil service.
Too many useless, incompetent,
and it's not their fault.
It's been a culture.
It is what is allowed.
Yes.
Our civil service everywhere in the world does not run like private organizations, but there has to be a minimum bar of quality. Why are you hired? Why do you exist? If you exist to help people process land papers, your KPI is the speed
at which you process it.
People should not. Do you understand?
Yes.
If you exist to help the citizens of the state get things done, you will get it done, and there will be things like bonuses that will be tied to it. So if you focus on it, will be quality, it will be speed. People should come into the office and be able to walk in and walk out with ease. Not when they want to go to civil service, anything that has to do with government.
They don't spend a whole day. They'll spend a whole day there.
If people want to set up businesses, it should be easy for them to set up business and get their license that they need to do business they need to do. So I think that's something else. That whole civil service rejig is a very, very important one. But I think at a state level, that's what I'll focus on. State level as well, healthcare. Again, it's sort of the same thing with education, right? We know what we need. We know that we are not doing nearly enough in providing people with right access to education. But one of the problems that we have in Nigeria is that the structure of the country does not allow for the states to do what the states should ordinarily do. So we say we have a federal system of government, which is supposed to be a system of government where there are federating units, federal government and state government. What we have is more like a unitary system of government. There's too much power in the center, right? Sometimes you hear that, California, right, is the seventh largest economy in the world, right? It reflects in how the state looks. you should as a state, you should be eating more from what you make than all of us are gathering our money, go to go and give it to the federal government, and they will not share it for us. So the lazy states will be eating as much as the hardworking states. That doesn't make any sense. So if you enabled business in your state, there should be reward for it. If you did the work, there should be reward for it. So our state governors actually are very limited. The problem is that, again, even as administrators, they are horrible administrators. Yes. All they do is issue contracts, but they issue the horrible contracts. They issue it corruptly. They issue overbloated contracts. They always want a cut. That is the problem. They pad it. So things like that. So drive efficiency in like roads. Honestly, roads should not be a problem in Lagos State. All our roads should be good. Let me say 80% of our roads should be good. The way you drive around Abuja, and like when you're in main Abuja city, it's like almost all the roads are good. That's how Lagos should be. Yeah. At least on the island that you're driving now, in this island, in Ikeja, in all those kind of places, our roads should just be good. Not that you're driving out of Lekki, your car is like, do you get? So we should fix out the simple things and then fix education. Then obviously, when I say roads, I mean like like flooding should be fixed. Local government chairman, I'm not going to be.
I love it.
Because the local government chairman exists at the pleasure of the governors in Nigeria. So you just say that governor sacked local government chairman because look at the one that's happening in Ogun State where the guy sort of like spoke out that the governor is misusing funds or whatever. DSS arrested him. And they asked him to apologize and things like that. So I won't be a local government chairman. That's a useless office.
That's okay. That was like the final punchline. Oh my God, Ejiro, thank you so much for this conversation.
Yeah.
We're really happy that you've come on to share your insights on this topic. I think that is something that maybe for the longest time we've always wanted to talk about, but probably not had like the
in-depth
knowledge and the technical background to speak on it. So thank you very much for coming. Please, if you guys have any feedback on the conversations that we had today or any inputs, kindly send us fan mail to fanmail@
234essential.com.
Great. And follow us on every social media platform at 234.
Yes, follow us on all social media platforms. Don't forget to send your fan mail also and release therapy and all that. And have hope if you are the hopeful one. And if you are saving for Japa, and if you are saving money for Japa, please make it sharp. You know how to go. Well, long live the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
Yes, sir.
Thank you guys. Stay kind.
Bye.